So sorry, I have 3 monitors, and so I look in all directions at pretty much all times. But this is probably one of my favorite sessions. I am super passionate about using Power BI for financial information. So we just have a few slides at the beginning that I'll go through. I just want to introduce myself. I am Belinda Allen. I'm a Microsoft MVP for the data platform group, and I've been an MVP for, I just was awarded my 10th one, so woohoo. And I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, and training is mostly what I do. I've co-authored a couple of books on Power BI, and specifically with the Dynamics GP products. So got that under my belt. I have my email address in there. I have my blog. My main blog is Ms. Belinda Allen. That's basically my brand. So that's where you could find me on most things, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So that's a little bit about me. I also happen to be a Power BI coach with Radicad and with Enlightening. So I'm excited about those 2 relationships as well. This is our agenda for today. It's going to be pretty fast paced, so ask questions as you see fit. I do have the chat for Teams for the live chat over here. I don't know, Cecilia, is that okay for them to chat, ask questions in that?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, so use the Teams to ask me questions, and then I'll monitor those, but I'll be hanging out for the remainder of the day today. And so I look forward to that. And I've also got like a 10-minute little session I'm doing, the only woman in the room, later today. So hopefully you'll join me for that. Our agenda is, I just want to do some brief introduction on cash flow, some thoughts I have, and some additional notes, but we're going to be heavy on the demos. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things we've learned, first of all, in the business world is that cash and profits do not equal each other. So you could be profitable and cash poor, or you could be cash rich and have no profit at all. And so that's why I want to focus on this, because I love this quote that's on the left: profits are an opinion, cash is a fact. And so it's really something that we need to be very careful and monitor. Now, this is the traditional cash flow statement that has been around forever and a day. So I've been working in particularly with ERP data for over 30 years. So I've been in the IT space with ERP data for a little over 30 years. And so every time somebody would ask me to build a financial statement, if they were talking about a profit and loss or an income statement, I would say, oh, have you considered like trying this or looking at the data this way? But when it came to cash flow, I was like, just tell me what you want and I'll do it. And so, and that this is it, right? It's really just a mess. It's not very user friendly. I know very few people who could read it. Usually they're CPAs, financial institutions. A few people who are not CPAs know how to read them, but they're not very clear. So they're not going away, because you do need them for lending institutions. And if you have any kind of public reporting that you have to do, either with groups that are similar to yours, then you still need that traditional kind of statement. But if you're trying to use it internally to investigate, then it's something entirely different. That statement is worthless. So I want to focus on what the cash flow statement is meant to reveal. First of all, it's to help you decide where your cash is coming from. Is it coming from revenues? Is it coming from loans or stock sales? If it's coming from loans and stock sales, then you're probably going to be in trouble when it comes to maintaining your business long term. So you want to make sure it's coming from revenues. And it also helps you determine where your cash is being spent. Well, now that we can get, and before I get on to my next thought, and it also is meant to really look at cash over long spans of time, to usually multiple years. And so what it's really trying to gather is, are you pouring cash, or is your business thriving? And so now that we have the ability to get into the details of the data using Power BI and different kinds of interactions and drill down, then we should really take advantage of that. Now, this is, of all of my slide decks from all of my presentations, this simple picture of this Nike shoe is my favorite. So a couple years ago, I read the book by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, called Shoe Dog. It is a great book. First of all, it's a story about how he started the business and why and the struggles that they went through. And to me, it's kind of a business book that's written a little bit like fiction. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I totally recommend it it's a must read. I'm aging myself now. This particular version of Nike, this particular shoe was popular when I was in junior high school. Everybody had to have the shoe. I mean, almost everybody in my school was wearing this exact shoe. Male, female, didn't matter. Now, what's interesting about that is after reading the book Shoe Dog, I now realize by putting the dates together that even though this was the must shoe to wear, and not just in our school, but I mean, I lived south of Atlanta at the time, and everywhere I went, people were wearing this exact shoe. And at that time, they were struggling to stay in business because they didn't have the cash flow. And so I just found that to be utterly fascinating. If you had asked me then, of course, I was in junior high school, I would have said, oh, that they must be rolling in millions and millions of dollars. And keep in mind, that was quite a few years ago. So millions was like millions, right? So very different than some of the numbers we think of today. But the fact that they almost didn't make it at the time that everybody was wanting to wear their shoe is quite astounding to me to this day. Now, one more note before we get into demos, which we're going to get into after this slide, is when it comes to monitoring your cash, you might want to think outside the box a little bit on the date. So I have 3 dates over on the right using the Back to the Future theme that our Data Geek Saturday is doing, which is so fun to me. So in the middle, we have today's date. This is whatever date we happen to be looking at the report. It's the system date in the bottom right corner of our computers. So that is today's date. On the top line, we have what I'm calling reporting date. And this is the date in which your transactions appear in your financial date system. So are in your financial reports. So a transaction, I might say, I want it to appear on my November financial statement. So it's going to have a November reporting date, right? So I could see it in that particular date. But when it comes to cash, and particularly cash management, that reporting date is not always something that we want to pay attention to. We probably want to focus not only on the reporting date, but on the bottom date, the date it's actually entered or committed or posted to our system. And the reason for that is if I'm monitoring my cash every week, I want to see why did my cash balance change between today and the last time I looked at it. And so some of our reports, we want to be using that particular date. It may not matter, or it may matter what date or what transaction or what financial statement date it appears, but we don't want anyone being able to slip in or outside transactions by dating it somewhere else, right? Dating it quite a few years ago. And there's one particular report that I'm going to build that we used in our company for years. My husband and I had our own consulting practice for GP for many, many, many years. And I realized, hey, I could slip, I didn't, but I could slip cash changes to him by dating it or weeks earlier. And what I was really thinking when I thought that is he's going to miss seeing those depending if I'm using the reporting date, the general ledger transaction date. And I really thought customers could slip them by. So I don't want that to happen. I want him to be able to see why the number changed since the last time. The more information he has available to him in the report, the less he's going to ask me. So it was worth my while to make sure that he saw that. So let's go ahead and dig into our demo. So I'm going to open up my Power BI report here. Let me make it full screen. There we go. Oh, okay. I guess that's full screen. All right. So this is my Power BI report. And right now, that I'm going to use for today, I'll show you how I have the data modeled. So let's see. I have a couple queries here. I actually have 5 queries here. You notice my relationship is only flowing between 3 of them. So, and I have that done deliberately. So let's focus with the 3 that have a relationship so you know where I'm getting my data. So first of all, I'm getting my cache data from my general ledger information. So I have the capability of narrowing it down to just looking at my cash transactions, right? Or just the things that affected my cash accounts. And I'm looking at general ledger data because I want to make sure that I capture everything, even a general ledger journal entry that may have been entered in. Now, this is my fact table. And then I have my 2 dimensions or lookup tables. One is my chart of accounts, so that I could see account numbers if I want to. And that's also where I have a category listed so I can narrow down to just look at cash ones. Now you might be wondering already why I have all of my transactions here and not just cash. And you'll see that as we get to the very last report as to why that is. And then I have my another dimension table and a lookup table. This happens to be a calendar table. This is my date table. I like to call it calendar rather than date because I do have the date, a date as my date of record, so that my official date, so that I could use functions like year to date and so forth. And I find it confusing for some of the people I work with. I notice they get a little bit confused distinguishing between the date query and the date field. So I just name the query calendar instead. So this is my relationship. My 2 dimension tables or lookup tables are my chart of accounts and my calendar, and then my dimension or my fact or my data table is my general ledger transactions. Now I also have extracted over here from my accounting system, and this happens to be coming from GP, but where it's coming from is irrelevant. It's the concepts that we're after today. And in this one, I'm getting my bank balances. So this is actually just what the bank in my ERP system says through right this moment. And in this particular case, it even includes things in the future. So even if I post-dated something in the future, I want to monitor that that's the cash amount. Then I also have information like when it was last reconciled, what the reconciled balance was. I have an uncleared amount so I can see the amount uncleared. And then one other thing that we're going to use is the number of days that are not reconciled. And we'll talk about why I like having that out there in a moment. And then I also have just created a query that gives me the last refresh date. And so I like using that on my report as well. Now, I don't always use it on a report, but when I'm looking at something like what is my cash balance, I want to have an as of right now moment. And so I will then use as of the refresh date. Normally, once I publish something to the Power BI service, I like to take advantage of using the Power BI apps, creating them from the workspace. And that does give you the last refresh date and time. And I prefer for it to be there. So that's just one less thing cluttering up the screen. But in this case, I like to use it as part of my report. So you could see these. These do not have relationships because they don't need relationships. I'm just gathering my balance as of right now. And I'm gathering what the last refresh date is as of right now. So that's my data model. And right now you can see I just have created reports. We're going to populate all these. A few of them do have like filters I left out there where I'm extracting the year. This one I have period, and then this one just has a little bit of text, and we'll go through. These are all the reports that we are going to create today. And for those of you who are live, I have, because it'll be turned off after the session, I do have a form you can fill out. I'll share the PBX with you so that the PBIX, so as long as you don't refresh, You could play around with it, and I have my slide deck, and I have my demo notes. So let me show you how I do my demo notes, because this might be worth your while as well. You could see how I built everything out. And for the most part, I screenshot every one of these. So that's just how Belinda likes to do her demo notes. So let's build the bank balance first. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the bank balance transactions. And I want to be able to get the bank balance information. And let me go ahead and just do a quick refresh here on everything. So that way it'll be nice and fresh. But I want to get the bank balances as they are right now. And in this particular case, again, this is only bank balance. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the card visual. So I'm going to go ahead and just select the card visual. Don't know why it's not working. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to probably end up with 4 of them, but that's all right. All right, and I'm just going to shrink this up, and I'm going to populate the card visual with just my bank balance. And of course, a little bit of work we want to do whenever we use a card visual. These are things everybody really should know. I'm going to go to the data label and turn off the rounding so it's not rounded. And I'm also now, that's my bank balances. I'm going to come over to the field query, and I want to rename this one for just this visual. I'm going to call it bank balances for all accounts. And then that way I could see a little closer. Did I not get that in? Nope, didn't save it. Let me do it again. Bank balances for all accounts. There we go. So now I have that nice and neat right in there. So that's the first thing that I like to do, because this visual is so powerful. It, you know, if you want to see how much cash you have, boom, there it is. You don't have to try to figure out from a chart or a graph. We want the data to be easy to digest. And then another thing I love about this is if you, once you publish it and you put it in to a dashboard, you can create alerts on it. So that's helpful for end users who are trying to monitor the cash. Now, the next thing I want to do is come in and put the as of date, because now I want to know what this bank balance is as of. So I just have this title, which is just a text query. But one of the new things that we have now is a smart narrative. That's one of our new AI visuals that are inside of Power BI Desktop. And so once I start typing in text, you may have noticed this box that appears. This is the smart narrative visual where I can populate a field right in here. So I'm going to come in and add a value, and the value that I want is the refresh date. So I'm going to select that. And now there's my refresh date right there, and it's getting it from my last refresh field right here. So I could even change this to last refresh date and still getting the same field. Okay, cool. So I've got that listed right there, and I could set the format, long or short if I want to, right here on the spot. And then I'm going to go ahead, I could name it, we'll just call it refresh. All right. And then I'm going to click on save. Now there's the refresh date. This is where I still struggle with getting the font for it exactly the way I want. So this is something I've been struggling with myself, because you'll notice that as I come through, there we go. Now I got it. Now I'm going to come in and make it 32. Okay. And now I have my last refresh date. And as every time it refreshes, it's going to refresh in the title of the report right here. And that's going to be helpful to users. Okay. Now I'm going to come in and add in a table, and I want to keep an eye on time. Doing really good. And on my table, again, we need to give the users who are consuming this report, which usually are higher end managers or C-level executives or department heads, we want to give them confidence of this data. Now, one of the things after years of implementing ERP systems, and you guys are probably, you might even snicker to yourself a little bit when I say this, but there are some employees who will just stack their work up on their desk. Like if you could see on my desk on a camera, you would think I do, but they stack their work up on their desk, and they don't get it in right away. And if they don't get it in the system, then the data that we have isn't going to be great. And so we need to make sure that they're doing work on a regular basis. So we need to have some confidence in here. So one of the things that I like to do in my visual here is I will just come in and add in some of my reconciliation or how I reconcile. So let's see, I've got status, and you can see I'm cheating and looking over at my notes. I've got my bank balance. I want my reconciled balance. I want the uncleared amount reconciled through. And I also want the days unreconciled. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to quickly come in and make this a little bit bigger text. All right. So let's come into the grid. Make that, let's make it 14. Okay. So that looks good. Nice and easy. Here is our report. What's going to give them confidence when they look at this is how long it's been since something has been reconciled. And I realized I did not get in my reconciled through, so I'm going to have to make that font a little bit smaller. And okay. So this is something that's going to give me some peace of mind. Now, one of these is dated way out in the future, so that's why it's got a negative number affiliated with it. It also happens to be an inactive account, so I could get rid of that if I wanted to. But this is what's telling me the relevance of my particular numbers. And I might want to go to the bank account balance and just come in and add the conditional formatting of the data bars. That's so easy to do. You don't even need to really check anything. And I realize that's a really dark color. So let me come in and edit that conditional or that data formatting. Let me make positive. I miss it when I don't have something in green. So I'm going to come in and make that green. And let's make it light green. Okay. I did it in the wrong spot. All right, let's get it in the right spot. Bank balance, come to me. And conditional formatting, data colors. And now I could use that recent color. There we go. All right, we'll leave it on reconciled balance anyhow. I could also see what is unreconciled, and this is or uncleared, because this one gives me real pause. It's like, why hasn't this been reconciled? So if we have that much uncleared, let's make sure the bank got it, right? So I want to be able to pay attention to what hasn't cleared the bank yet, and I could see my balances at the same time. But now I need to focus on the confidence level, like something that hasn't been reconciled in 67 days. I'm not going to have a lot of confidence in the accuracy of that particular number. So on that one, I do like to come in on the days unreconciled, and I like to do conditional formatting here. I like to do it with icons, and I'm even going to change and use the flags. I like the flags. I think they're fun. I'll leave it on values only. I'm going to change this to let's see, not the count of days unreconciled. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change it to, actually, I want the sum. We'll leave the days unreconciled right where it is. Okay. And I'm going to move it to the right of my data, and that looks good. So now I just need to set my function here. So I'm going to say, first of all, if it hasn't been reconciled in more than 30 days, then I'm going to, I want it to appear as, let's see, is less than, I could leave that one 100%. That should work for me. I'll leave it a red flag. If it is greater than 14 days, but less than 31, then I want it to be yellow. And then if it is, I'm going to go ahead and put in a large negative number here, because we already saw my system is allowing for me to have negative numbers, which is out of the norm, but I'm going to go ahead and allow for it anyhow. Then I have, and it's less than 2 weeks, I want it to be green. And then, so now I have my flags listed here so I could see a level of confidence I have. And I can see right now I might have concern about these two. So I'm a big fan of having the bank reconciled every day if possible, but it should be done every week. So that's how I kind of span those out. You could use your own colors and your own flags as you see fit. Now, another thing that I like to do here is how is our cash moving? And not enough people use the scatter chart. Now, I don't have a lot of data in here, so I'm going to just show what I have. And on the scatter chart, one of the things that I'm going to put in on the legend, on mine, I would put in date, but like I said, I don't have a lot of transactions out here. So I'm going to go to my account number. Now, I have this narrowed down to just cash, and I did narrow down the date here for me, but that's just because this is the only way I can get transactions. You might just put in a whole date and let it roll. So I'm going to come in and take my account and drag this into my legend. And then on my x-axis, I'll go to my transaction amounts. And I'm going to get my actual year to date and put it in the X legend, and then my actual month to month percent date and put it over the Y axis. And then on the size, I want to get the net amount. And you may notice I have net and I have net credit. Net just looks at debit minus credit, and net credit goes credit minus debit. And so since this is a cash statement, we're dealing with cash mostly, I just call the debit minus credit net, but I will clarify if I want to see something in cash. And then, oh, actually now in the play axis, I will go through and put the date. Okay, so these are mostly the only way I could really get it to play well in my little ballpark here. Okay, so what's cool about the scatter chart is since I have this date down at the bottom on the play axis, I could click on play and I could see, and it's real sporadic. Normally it would be very different, but I could see my cash move as it, and I could see the date where it's moving as I'm going along. So not only is it telling me a story, it's showing me a picture of what my cash is doing. Now, if you have more consistent data, you're going to actually see things grow and shrink, and be able to focus on it much more clearly. Now, my account, I am listing all of my individual bank accounts that I have in this legend up here. And I don't know what it would look like if I got rid of that. Let's see. Yeah, well, you can see it moving a little bit more. Some days I don't have any net cash, so the little icon there, or the moving bouncing ball, if you will, just flat out disappears. But this is something that you could you never know what you're going to find sometimes. Sometimes you're just throwing things at the wall when it comes to Power BI. Like we don't always know what we need to ask. So sometimes we have to say to Power BI, I don't know, help me out. And that's where a lot of the AI pieces come in. All right, on to cash analysis. Okay, so on the cash analysis one of my favorite visuals is the decomposition tree. I don't know how many of you have played with that. The visual is listed here, but I'm going to go and insert it from the insert option because I want to point out there is this AI visual section here. Q&A is part of that. There's a lot more to Q&A than what we've done in early stages of Power BI on the dashboard. There's tons of it we could do now, but there's also this key influencer that's really cool. And then smart narratives. We did work with smart narratives already in our title. We'll work with it again in a few moments, but I'm going to go ahead and click on the decomp tree. And this one becomes a little more interesting. I'm going to zoom in on my, oh, I zoomed in the wrong place. Okay, had my cursor in the wrong spot. There we go. I'm going to zoom in while I do this one. So the fields that we have to populate are analyze and explain by. So I'm going to come in and get my actual year to date, and I want to analyze that. Another thing that you might want to do is put in the growth or the change since the previous day or the net amount. That might be another thing that you want to do. I'm going to tell it my series, and in this case, series would represent it came from purchasing, it came from sales, payroll, inventory, or the financial series. I'm going to go through to my calendar and get the month. And I'm going to go back to the transactions and get my sub ledger. So if it came from payables, I'll see the actual vendor. If it came from sales, I'll see the actual customer. I'm also going to now come up to my accounts, and I'm going to get my account number, and I'm going to get my department ID. Okay, now one of the things you'll notice, again, I have my filter on this page is set automatically to cash already, so that helps a lot. Then we end up with this. Now, you might want to go in and turn tooltip off. It's far too easy to do. It's just in formatting, because one of the things, this would end up being the tooltip, so it's just duplicated. But one of the things I love about this, so I'm looking at my actual cash for the year 2027. I have that filter in place already. And if I click on the plus, I could select any of these, so I could manually go in and look at it by month. But what I love about this is if I click on this, part of that, I don't know what to ask. I don't know what I don't know. So I have this high value and low value here. And anytime you see the light bulb, you know this is artificial intelligence at play. So I'm going to go through and say the high value. So of all of these explain buys, which one of these is increasing my cash the most? And so it says, oh, it looks like the series has a bigger effect on what the cash is than anything else. So here is the financial series seems to be doing more for my cash than anything else. So I could click on this again and go high again. Okay, in the financial series, what is the next big explain buy that has some significance? And I could see the line is drawing, it looks like March. May is closely behind, but I could see by the number March is definitely the highest. And I can work my way through these, either by high or by low. The department, there's only one, so the department listed next, and then it's that particular cash account. And I could work my way all the way through, so it looks like this particular bank owner. So now that I'm looking at this, I'm sitting here thinking, what would happen if I looked at sales? So if I click on sales, you'll notice that month became still the biggest factor here, account, then department, and then subledger. But if I come back up to finance, department and account switch. So it will do for me. Oh, look, this is really interesting, because when I go to purchasing, obviously the series is just coming from payables. So it looks like this is the vendor that has the most. And it will even change potentially all of the other pieces depending on this. So this is a very cool way for some of the people that are not that big into building Power BI or doing special analysis. It gives like a lot of C-level executives the ability to do some of their own analysis by being able to do some of these things. So they can manually choose, they can do high, 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 or high, low, but either way, you get some really powerful pieces of information here, and at least things that you might want to investigate from that point forward. And depending on your data, you could choose different options and you might find other value. So if you're using something like BC, you might want to include dimensions. If you have classes or categories for vendors, you might want to use that as well, or for any of your master ledger accounts and so forth. All right, on to some more analysis fun. Okay, now I say fun, but I particularly find this fascinating. And one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit more is dates here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come and add in a, and these are some of the actual visuals I help customers build when I do coaching. So I'm going to start with the table over here. And in this particular table, all I'm going to put in is the date from my calendar table. And by the way, that date is affiliated with the reporting date or the posting date or the general ledger date, whatever you want to call it, the date of when it appears on my financial system. And so now I'm going to go into my transactions and I'm going to grab actual year to date and put it in the value as well. So now I have this running total of what my year to date is. And I actually have the year in a filter here, just to kind of keep it a little more narrow. But I could see what my cash balance is for each and every day of my calendar year. And so that's pretty helpful. Then I like to come in and add in another visual here. And on this one, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am, make it a little smaller. So on this one, I'm going to come in and add in, instead of adding, I'm going to keep the same date field here. So I'm going to get my date, populate that in, and here I'm going to aggregate by series. And so now I have that done. So I've got the date and I've got the series. And so I might even come in now and look at the individual debits and credits, aggregated, of course. And then now that I have this, what I might want to do is also include that originating posted date. That's the other date that I calculated. So now I have aggregations where I'm looking at not only the date in my system, but the date that transaction actually occurred. And so that's what this is for. So you want to make sure you explain that to someone when you're showing that to them, of why we have two dates here and what they represent. But it gives me a little more insight as to when somebody's doing particular transactions. Now I'm going to do something that I also think is a lot of fun. So I'm going to take this visual, copy and paste it. And we're going to put this one, maybe. Come on. All right. We'll do it this way. Okay. I had a hard time moving it. And still not wanting to move for me. So, all right. This will do the trick. All right. I'm going to change this to a clustered line and column chart, clustered column and line chart. And I love it when I'm looking at transactions by day. It almost gives me that area chart feel, and I love that because sometimes I love the way that I could see some of the differences just ever so slightly changing, and I could see it's ever so slightly going down. I could use another line for it, but I don't know. I just like the idea of being able to see the visuals look like this. Now, another thing that I like to do with this is just the cash listed right here. I have a measure where I am using calculate, so I can ignore my cash filter, and I can get my sales. And so I'm getting the net amount for all of my transactions for sales. Now it's maintaining the filter for, it's maintaining some of the other filters, but I could see my sales amount there. So I'm going to take that and move that into the line. And I love doing this because now I have a comparison of what my sales are doing in relation to my cash. And I could definitely see that once the sales cease right around May 2027, for example, my cash slowly declines. So that makes sense. Now, the last thing I want to add in, again, I'm going to go up to insert, even though it's available on the visualization pane. I'm going to go in and add a smart narrative in right here and talk about the phrase a picture's worth 1,000 words. Whoops, let me collapse that. I actually have the words here, and this is something that I absolutely love. And so I've got some dates going on here. I think this is probably using my actual posting date. So I might want to come back in, and because of the formatting, yep, transaction date, that's probably it right there. Even though that's hidden because I have the relationship set up there, I'm going to go ahead and change the way that appears and see if that has an effect on this. And it did not, but I could come in always, and we know that, and change it right there. Okay. Save. So we have this happening. Now, what I love about using this particular narrative, because it's actually telling me what it could figure out, like the actual year to date has had no change in trend since Tuesday, December 20th. Okay, so that's interesting to note. So what happens if I select a particular day? Well, let me grab a day with transactions. My smart narrative is going to change as well if I do that. So that's a bad example. So let me try to get everything back. And let me try to grab a date. Oh, let me try over here. Just select this. See if I get some more smart narrative. Nope. But as I keep adding things, I might end up getting some smart narrative as I go along. So I love the fact that this is here because this is AI trying to help me out with some of the things I don't know. So I think this is a really, really cool feature. Okay, good. I am doing good on time. Okay, forecast. So let's move on to the forecast. Now, one of the things that I love is the analytics that we can get when we are formatting our visual. So I'm going to go through and take a line chart here. And because we need to do this by date. And so I have my line chart right here. And what I'm going to put in my line chart, first of all, is while I'm here, let me go ahead and get the net and put the net into the values. If I open up my filters, I do have it already just filtered to all my cash accounts. And then I'm going to come up to the date and put the date in the axis. So this is what my cash is looking like over a period of time. And I am normally not a giant fan of line charts, but I love them when you're looking at something over a period of time because it kind of becomes like an EKG. And I use that term seriously because it is cash is the lifeblood for our organization to be able to survive. So I could see what's happening. And of course, with the tooltip, I could even see a particular date, a number of a value that's affiliated with that. All right, so as I'm looking at this, I want Power BI to be able to do a little bit of forecasting for me. So because this is a line chart with the date in the axis, I'm using the date in the axis. If I select this analytics option up here, and let me zoom in, I can come down to forecast and I can add in a forecast. Now I want to look out 3 months. So I'm going to grab 3 months and then apply. And what I end up with, I'm going to leave the zoom on for a moment, because if I select in here, you'll notice that it's forecasting out 3 months for what I have. So I'm looking at the year 2028. So it starts out with January, February, and March. And it's showing me what it thinks the cash should be for those 3 months. And there is a forecasted amount, which is what I actually see in forecast 1, and that has this upper and lower bound. And this is based on the confidence level that is set in the forecast area. And so this is the range it expects to be in with a 95% confidence. And so I could see that upper bound and that lower bound. So I can see the information that I could see what it expects me to have, but I could also see the range in which that would normally occur. And so this is something that's pretty cool. And you saw I had different options of setting that. So if you're not using that for your cash, I totally recommend it. You need to make sure you have a lot of transactions, because if I go to like 2027, notice how it disappears. There is an X right there. And if I were to, well, I'll read that to you. Data is too irregular to forecast, see details. So you need to make sure you don't have irregular data. But that's also important to know. It's hard to forecast because the data is too irregular. And that might have something to do with shareholders' loans and things of that nature. To which I would probably say that you might want to do some additional filtering in for the kinds of transactions or the source of data that is available there. All right, so we've got this going on. So I'm going to come into my weirdness one. And my weirdness one is just with anomaly. So we're looking for weirdness is what I'm really getting at. So I'm going to come in and Let me stretch this out. Once again, I'm going to put the date in the axis, just like I did before, and I'm going to put the net amount into the value. So, and this one is not looking at, I haven't narrowed down the date ranges at all. Oh yeah, I have right here, sorry. 2027 is what we're looking at, and we could see it's cash. Okay, all of just my cash accounts. So now what I'm going to do is go back to analytics. I'm going to zoom in for you again. And I'm going to do anomaly. Now you cannot have an anomaly and a forecast in the same report, so I want to point that out. But I'm going to click on add, and when I add, I get a sensitivity level option. So I'm going to just change this to like 90% human sensitivity and apply and zoom back out. Now I get these little, I like to call them teardrops, and you can look, edit them a little bit. They have a couple different formats for you if you wanted to do that. But what it's doing is it's saying, okay, this was the actual number. So in this case, it happened to be 2 million. The expected value based on what I've done so far. So it's using the same algorithms as forecasting, was at this date should have been $12,474.46. So in essence, that was what the Power BI forecasted for this day. And then it gives me that expected range again based on that confidence level. So anywhere within here would have been within the format. But I was way outside that format. So what's actually happening here is it's looking for outliers to the forecast. And everywhere it sees those outliers, it's putting that anomaly detection. So not only is that cool, but if you click on it, you get this whole screen in the middle that tells you potentially where the anomaly might have occurred. So it is using the same kind of insights that we've seen inside the Power BI service, or if you're doing an increase or decrease, using like or show me the increase or decrease, or show me the distribution from the previous column in a column or report. It's using that same kind of anomaly to try to give me possible explanations. So let's see, it was unusually high, which may have lifted the total net. So that's one of the things, that particular account was basically where the outlier might have been. And then it gives me some other options, other pieces of information in as well. If I go in to open up the month of March here, here's another one that, again, showing me some of the outlier information. But this is very, very cool in my opinion, because it goes back to you don't know what you don't know. And it's a great analysis tool for monitoring your cash. As we continue on, one of my favorite add-on or visuals that you would install from AppSource is a calendar. And I love this for analyzing cash. And in this particular situation, I have, instead of year, I have period here. So in my calendar, I like to put in the period where I have the year dash and the period. And I think this is important for any type of financial statement you do, because often you'll want to cross years when you're looking at something. So if you were looking at an income statement, for example, over the last 12 months, that's a rolling 12-month report, and that's going to cross periods. So even though we know how to sort our months by the month number so that they'll list chronologically, if we put the month name out there somewhere, it's still going to put like January before July, even if I was, or let's say September, even if I was looking at show me the last 12 months now, which would mean that September should be of last year should be the very first statement or column, or the very last statement. So I like to have a period out there as well. And for this, I definitely need to select a month and a year for a calendar. So I've already installed my calendar in my slide deck. I do have which calendar it is. Actually, I'll show you which one it is. I'll go to get more visuals. I already have it installed though. And I just type in calendar. And it is this BeyondSoft calendar. This is my favorite one. and it is free to use. And so I'm going to populate, and since this may be new to you, this visual, so I'm going to come over and use the zoom on it. So I have a date field and I have a measure field. So the first thing I'm going to do, you do have to have a date of record in order to be able to do this one. So keep that in mind. So there's my date, getting it from my calendar date. So again, I'm using the general ledger date, if you will, for this one. And under transactions, I'm just going to simply go in and put net because I want to see how my cash is changing every day. Now, right now, not very pretty, a little small, hard to read. So I do like to make a few changes to it. And one of the change I like to make is the text. So I'm going to go into format. I'm going to go to text or search for text. I'm going to change all of these to 14 so they'll be nice and big. So there's the calendar one. You could already see some of it getting bigger there. I'm going to change the data label to 14 and then make sure the title is 14, and it is. Now what I'm going to do, let me get rid of that, is I'm going to open up the data colors because I like to make them diverging. So for the minimum colors, the days where I have more cash going out, like there's a bigger negative number or a smaller positive number, I'm just going to use a light red. For the center color, I'm going to come in and choose a light yellow. And then for the maximum color, I am going to come in and choose a light green. Okay, now that I've got that done, let me zoom out. Here is my calendar. So I can literally see on my calendar how my cash is changing. Now, one of the things you could do for this to make this a cash forecasting as well is you can add to your list, like if you add in all of your payables and all of your receivables, you can do it by due date, by set the due date and the amount and populate it. If I paid it exactly on time, this is what my cash balance would be. And if you do that, you might want to consider on the receivable side that you like leave off like 5% for bad debt. And so that way you could have that out there, but you could even maybe take the bad debt and have that be a different color field if you want to, or do something like that. But this is something that's really very, very cool that I particularly find. Now, I have 2 more reports and I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to go pretty quickly on, I might just show you one side of this report. And this is a report, I'm going to just add in a columnar, column table right here. And what I do here is I will come in and add in my subledger into the access, and I'm going to take the credit value, because right now I'm just doing like what reduces, where my cash went out, and I'm going to put this in the value. So whoop, that's debit. I want to get credit. So I'm literally just getting the credit side of my general ledger transactions. I'll go through and change the color and so forth. You could take, if I open this up, I have the originating posting date, and you could come in and make this a relative date and see like that last X number of days. So this is what changed in my system over a certain number of days, and I can see this. And I'll do another side for the inflows. And I'll show you that in just a moment when we get back to the slide deck. And then for the change in balance, I just want to show you how I created this, and then I'll show you on the others. I create 6 of these, and I make them a little small. And again, here I'm using period, so I have like, I could select a rolling quarter or whatever I want to do. And on this one in particular, what I do is I'll come in and I will get like, let's say I'm going to get my cash amount. I'm going to get the net and put it in value because that would be the debit minus credit. And then I'm going to also get on the access, I'm going to come in and put my account, actually month rather. I'm going to put the month or period in my access. Okay, and so now that I have that done, what I do, because I could see I'm getting nothing, that's because debits equal credits. This is where I come in and get my category. And for just this visual, I'm going to narrow it down to just showing me the cash. Okay, now that you see that, let me flip to my slide deck for the remaining ones. So I have copies of all these reports on my slide deck. Okay, so on the inflow and outflow, I could see literally where my cash came from and where it went to. And if it's blank, that's something that came from general ledger. Okay, so a general ledger entry I made. This is just debit entries, just credit entries. That means if I'm correcting a mistake, I will see that too, because I want to see where the money goes. That's what we used to call this report in our company, where the money goes. But it also shows us where the money comes from. And that way, if you look at this from since the last time you looked at it, you're really going to be able to get some very interesting information. You will have your hands tightly over the cash so you can see exactly what's happening. Now on this one, here's the changes to cash that I did, but I also did an AR and a sales, and then I did an AP, and then I did inventory cost of goods sold, and I'll explain that in a moment. I have net profit. So when I'm analyzing my cash, I could see, okay, my cash went up a lot in February of 2027. Now, AR went up, looks like even more, and my sales went up. So roughly, if I was looking at this and my tooltips popped up, I would see these went up about the same. That means, oh, that's even the wrong period. Oh, there you go. Okay, these went up about the same amount. And so by looking at that, I know right away, I don't have these sorted right. I know that even though I had sales in February, I didn't collect cash on them. And so they just went up. So if I come and look at my AP went up a little bit. So that doesn't explain why my cash went up. I lost or I spent a lot of money on my inventory, and you could just use expenses if you wanted to, and cost of goods sold. I include both of these so that I'm focusing on everything that all of the items that I purchased inside of that month, because if you have inventory and you buy it and you sell it in that same month, it goes in inventory, out of inventory, and into cost of goods sold. So I'm focusing on those two particular ones. So only the things that I purchased and sold this month will appear from cost of goods sold. Otherwise, it would just be inventory. And then I could compare it to my cash, so I could see what these months are doing side by side as I go along. So, whew, okay, right on time. This is, and I know, Cecilia, you have another thing to show. This is the URL or the QR code that you can get access to the deck, access to the Power BI, and I'll even share my crazy little demo notes that are all visual in nature for Belinda to build off of. But I'll be happy to share any of those. And I don't know that we had any questions at all. So either accounting data is not quite as interesting as you were hoping for, or you got something really out of it. So either way, thank you so much. I will be hanging out in Discord too. So that's it.
Awesome, amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you.